And today we have Colin Tom, who is Boulder County's climate and health strategist, and is going to be giving us an update on the state legislation that recently passed that affects the business communities. Um, and then we should have some time at the end for any sort of roundtable updates, things that folks want to share. Um, I'll give a plug and a reminder for some of the legislation from 2021 that passed that is inching closer to implementation or not, but should be at the end as well. So without further ado, Colin, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Zach, and thanks for having me. And I know a few of you will have heard me give some version of this, maybe the sustainability group. But I'm going to try to tune this for businesses. So first, what I'll be doing is just kind of showing you a list of climate and air quality bills that passed that are of interest, to climate, and then I'll pick out a few of those that are relevant to business. And first I would say that the work on these bills was very, very broad based. It's across many jurisdictions and within Boulder County across many departments. We do have a policy office who weren't able to make this presentation today. But their word is just that, thanks go out to all the elected officials that supported those of these bills that we supported and our coalition supported. Some of these bills we were less involved in. I personally was involved in a few of them. And when, as there are questions, I will need to probably defer some of those questions or refer them to the specialist who worked on the bill. Let's see, the other thing I would say, oh yes, so I know that this is just going to be a mouth-watering bunch of bullets I'm going to give you. I'm not able to share the presentation because the policy office has an official list of bills and with more detail that they are coming up with, but they won't have that till the end of the week. So consider this a sneak preview. And I'll be able to answer some questions, others I'll refer, but hopefully this will just kind of whet your appetite for what's out there. It was a very interesting session. We did not know what bills would pass up till the minutes before the end of the session. There were last minute amendments, last minute sacrifices that took place. A lot of these bills that I'll show you are not signed yet, and they, we expect them to be signed, but so that's why this is a sneak preview. So definitely don't hang your hat or, screenshot and share all over the world. Let's wait for the official list. But since this meeting is today, I hope that this will be useful to you. So I will go ahead and see if I can be successful sharing this up. Somebody shout when you can see a list.
Looks good.
Awesome. Okay, so I broke these into a few categories. Air quality and environmental justice and climate are kind of tied together because the sources for pollutants are also sources of greenhouse gases. There were a couple of bills, one carrying the governor's air quality funding, and one that provides public protections from toxic air contaminants. That one I'm not going to cover so much because it's less, unless you are a major industrial source, it's of less interest to you. Transportation, there's some incentives there, as well as about a month of free transit, which is pretty sweet. Buildings electrification, I kind of lumped some electric vehicle stuff in here as well. Affordable housing, I will tell you right now, I don't know as much about that. Summer Laws knows a lot more about that, so the policy office could follow up on any questions on that. Circular economy, we do have the producer responsibility. I'll cover that in a little more detail in a second. And then in part because of the Marshall Fire and in part just because of the growing shadow that wildfire casts on our on our landscape. There were quite a few bills addressing mitigation. I'll pretty much only cover 206, and Zach, I think, knows probably more than I do about that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the way I've quickly notated this in terms of what the opportunities for follow-up are, since this is a group of local government folks as well. There are some bills on which there are opportunities to encourage experts to apply to the boards and commissions that have been created. A lot of those bills have room for local governments slots. There are a couple I can think of right off the bat. There's also most of the bills have an opportunity to align and reframe local programs, and to for programs like PACE, for example, to provide compliance assistance. And then there are grant funds available by some of this legislation. So looking again at this list, you can kind of see where some of the opportunities are within these bills for follow-up. And this is something that we can help you with as the year goes on. A lot of these bills, of course, as Zach sort of intimated when he mentioned the 2021 bills, we have time to follow up on these bills, but here's some of the opportunity that we've got. So I'm going to jump into the first bill that is probably of interest to businesses. The air quality improvement investments is oriented towards voluntary projects. That is, this bill came out of the governor's office, CDPHE, and the voluntary measures are very, very much aligned with the administration's approach. There is opportunity for industrial manufacturing, efficiency, electrification, carbon and direct air capture, and process emissions reduction. So there is these are grant programs for that. And then there's also looking at business. There's bike share. And for cannabis businesses, direct incentives for energy and water use reduction. All of this is oriented around projects that will reduce air pollution. And air pollution can be, ozone precursors, particulate matter. So there's NOx, SOx, criteria pollutants from, criteria pollutants per the EPA. And then, of course, there's school districts, the big chunk for school buses. So that is that of the air and climate bills, that's the one that it probably provides the most opportunity for the business sector. The alternative transport, and actually, Zach, what's the most useful approach? Since I think I probably have a lot of time, should I just wait for questions at the end of each slide, if there are any that I could answer?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Any questions on this slide?
Miles had one.
Okay.
Is the 65 million for school bus electrification possible to expand to other fleet vehicles, such as food delivery for BVSD school food program?
Oh, that is a good question. I think this is explicitly for school buses based around the risk of air pollution impacts to children. But that is a question, and as I get questions, I will write them down. And unless Zach, it would be really awesome. Can you write down the questions? Oh, is that okay? I see.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And so as there are questions, I will forward them to the folks who know the most about each, and or get you an answer myself. Anything else on the air quality improvement investment? Okay. And I can also funnel questions after the meeting too, if that's easier.
I have one on the grant. Are these also available? It says to local governments, private entities. What about nonprofits or no?
I believe that is a good question. I had thought so, but I may be confusing it with another with another bill. So Zach, if you'd write that question down, I will.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, Colin. I'm specifically thinking on the 12 million component, the bike share programs and
Oh,
ownership programs.
I believe so. I do want to check that though.
Okay, thank you.
I'm on the page. I can confirm you that local governments, tribal governments, and nonprofit organizations that administer or plan to administer a bike share program or an ownership program for the provision of electric bicycles in the community. So yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. It's faster for you to look it up than to write down the question. That's awesome. Efficiency. Anything else on this one before we roll along? So I will go ahead. I believe this is the next one. So transportation. We had, of course, you'll recall 2021 huge transportation bill. So transportation was more focused and smaller and lighter this session around. So alternative transportation tax credit basically turns a tax deduction into a tax credit. I don't know if anyone on the call manages a program like this, but it's for the cash incentives, subsidized transit, ride sharing, car sharing, any of the, I love this low speed conveyances, that's bikes. But I love bill language. It's so much fun. And it's a substantial amount to the amount that can be subject to credit. And so that is that's kind of a sweet deal for businesses. And then 180, this is a grant program to fund transit associations for free transit services. I think the expectation is there may be, is that RTD may use it to provide free transit during August. Ozone, of course, is highest in the afternoons and highest in the summer. And it's those hot, still sunny summer days. You get high ozone. We are in severe non-attainment of the federal ozone standards throughout the North Metro Front Range. So that is the impetus for this bill, and hopefully also to get people trying transit and liking it and being willing to do it more often. It does have potential to become permanent if it's successful. Any questions on these? Cool. Yep, they're pretty straightforward. Let's see. So moving on to the, this one's pink because I worked on it and it turned pink when I clicked on the link. But the building's greenhouse gas emissions, this is building codes. It is new construction, major remodel across the state. Colorado has always deferred to municipal governments to adopt codes. It still does, but now the municipal governments do have kind of a minimum that they need to meet if they have building codes. That is for it's not as it's still quite modest, really. The 2021 IECC will only be required for the code update cycle beginning in 2023. And then a low energy and carbon code based on the IECC 2021 or 2024 will be required beginning the code cycle beginning 2026. So it's basically a floor for building efficiency and emissions. There will also be a model green code that's can guide municipalities that want to adopt a further code. And it provides substantial funding for grants and training related to the code compliances. That's for local governments, pretty much. 10 million is for building electrification in public buildings. So there's definitely some opportunity there for businesses providing those services. And then the high efficiency and electric heating and appliances grant program, businesses are eligible there. So that is pretty much the summary of that from a business perspective. The policies to reduce emissions from built environment has this long title. What it really is tax exemptions and credits for heat pumps and residential energy storage, as well as eligible decarbonizing materials. The 10% tax credit is off the purchase price. That's for heat pumps and energy storage. The decarbonizing materials is just the sales and use tax. What they're trying to get at there is really the high carbon materials like steel, concrete. But the Office of the State Architect will be compiling a list of materials that are applied towards that program, and it's not exclusive. Like it's possible that that list can be broader. So I'll stop for questions on these two.
Colin Tyler asked if for House Bill 1362, can the $3 million be used for hiring municipal staff or simply for education for developers and workforce?
That is a good question. I had thought it was for, I will have to go because that actually changed during the session. So let me Tyler get back to you and see where it landed. I had thought it landed away from FDEs, but it may include contracting. So let me actually check that. Zach, if you could note that for me.
Yep.
I'll get back to you today, Tyler.
Yeah, no rush, Colin. Thanks so much. This is super helpful.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Because I can't see any of your faces, so you're either all asleep or any other questions on these guys? Cool. Moving along. So
this is
yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. This will be available to all community members, like all property owners will be able to apply to those grants, or those grants will be for local municipalities?
The $3 million in grants and training is for local governments.
Okay.
Yeah, for local governments to adopt and implement the building codes. Is that
and
the one?
And for the heat pumps?
Oh, sorry, the heat pumps?
Yes.
The heat pump tax credit is for the purchaser, and it's yes, that is for whoever purchases a heat pump, whether that's the contractor, the building owner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it will be open for undocumented community members that owns buildings, and they can also apply for those resources.
Let me check. Let me go back and look at the restrictions. I'm wondering.
Yeah, because sometimes they ask for a lawful presence affidavit, and these members cannot sign.
I don't remember seeing, I certainly don't remember seeing anything explicit in there. But let me take a look. And I can, Zach, could I reach back out through you?
Thank you.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I can't see who's speaking.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
and that
sorry.
was
This is Berenice.
Oh, Berenice. Oh, good to see you, or not see you. But yes, that's an excellent question. And I think that's actually it's definitely very relevant to a lot of the purchasers, actually, since a lot of the contractors will be purchasing. So let me look that up and get back to you.
another question on the heat pump tax credits and grants. Does the property owner or developer, Yvette, can you just ask a question?
Sure. Thanks again, Colin. So I'm really curious on the ones that are for the tax exemptions and credits. Do you, in order to apply, do you have to have your permit already? Because then that affects implementation time periods. I was just wondering if there was anything built in around when they expire. I see some of them are beginning in 2026, but I was a little concerned about time frame. Maybe we could follow up on that.
Yeah, we should follow up. I have in fact, I think Zach, I sent you and Dave the summary of the timetable for
That's
these.
great.
I just didn't put the whole thing on the slide. And so Zach, maybe when we get off the call, I'll find that and forward it to Yvette.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you don't need a permit in hand, I don't believe. You just need to use a licensed contractor.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else on buildings? Okay. So I threw also into buildings this 1218 is it ran in parallel with some of the provisions of the other buildings bill 1362, which does have electric ready and EV provisions in it. But there's this bill got a little more specific on some of this the amount of EV charging that needs to take place in new commercial and multifamily buildings, because that's multifamily in particular is one where folks are worried about the lack of access to EV charging for folks who live in multifamily. So these are the percentages. EV capable is basically just conduit, EV and very basic provisions. EV ready is more like raceway wiring and everything except the charger itself. So any questions on this? Cool. Okay, moving on. Oh,
I
yeah.
have a question. Are there taking into account supply chain disruptions for all of this?
Well, it's very difficult to take that into account when proposing policy, because you just don't know what the nature of the disruptions or the duration is going to be. But I mean, the bill proponents and sponsors are definitely aware there are supply chain disruptions. It's probably unlikely it's going to make the type of work required here that difficult. But yeah, the proponents are aware of the disruptions. I imagine that if they became prohibitive, there would be pressure to go back to the legislature for some form of legislative relief, but that's not anticipated at this point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I will move on to circular economy. And by the way, when it comes to any of the things we've talked about so far, has anyone on the call heard of supply chain disruptions that would make any of this impossible? I know there's certainly a lot of concern out there, but so far we have not heard along those lines.
So I think, Colin, something to consider, I don't have an answer for that, but something to consider specifically with federal and state grants is sure, there's supply chain issues, but the next layer to that onion usually is the requirement to buy American. And so there's supply chain issues internationally, but then America sometimes doesn't even have manufacturers for certain items. And so local municipalities sometimes need to forego the grants or those opportunities simply because of the headache of trying to find American made X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I actually I do not know of Buy American provisions in a lot of the grants that I've put up here, but I can check for that. I'm more, yeah, I've heard of that under other grants, but I am not aware of that in these grants that I put up so far. But I can go back and look if that would be helpful. But that's a really great point. Have you encountered that in grants through state legislation in the past?
I'm not sure the provision is. I haven't dug deep into the state legislation. For example, the Charge America Colorado or charge, the Charge Ahead Colorado grant.
Yeah.
EV charging stations. No problem finding the equipment that's American made. However, the conduit and the wire and everything like that is usually required as well.
Okay.
And that's not hard to necessarily find. It's just usually 3 times as expensive.
Right.
So,
And
Yeah.
I believe that program is funded at least partially by federal dollars,
Yeah.
which is why that requirement's there.
Yep. That makes sense, Zach.
Colin, Lizzie asks for 1218, would municipalities be required to adopt these standards in their building codes? Lafayette's increasing their EV charging requirements this year.
That is an excellent question. I do not know about adoption in the building code. Let me go back and check where that hooks in. And Alicia, I'll get back to you. And next time that code cohort meets, I'll be sure to update them on this as well.
She says thanks. And
Okay.
also lots of people say you're doing great.
Oh gosh.
And it's very helpful.
Thank you so much. This is that gives me a huge amount of what I need, because I can't see any of you. It's hard. All right, well, I'll move on to the next one, so I leave you guys some of your precious time. The producer responsibility, this one you probably heard about because it was I don't want to say controversial, but there was certainly a lot of it's kind of a big new thing. In fact, the last time I spoke to this group, we talked about the consumer packaging provisions in a previous bill. This is kind of the next step there, where it's recognized that Colorado has pretty terrible recycling rates. And a lot of that is because it's just very difficult in a lot of places to create and fund a recycling program. So people may want to recycle, but there's no place to put it. And
Colin,
so,
can you jump to the next slide? Oh,
I'm so sorry. I jumped to I need to close. I jumped to it in PowerPoint. Sorry, I just didn't jump to it in the slideshow. So yeah, that's just the background. We're not recycling as well as we would like to. We need to be able to fund the local recycling programs that can change that. And that funding, there's 2 things going on. First, to make sure that we can fund the programs to recycle. Secondly, to incentivize producers to use more sustainable packaging. So there's what this does is the producer in producer responsibility is defined as the producer of the product that is packaged in and using the covered materials. The covered materials covered by the law is packaging and paper products with exceptions. Lots and lots of exceptions. You'd never get through this slide if I put them there. It does include internet sales. Don't want to disadvantage bricks and mortar if internet is not included. It provides the sustainable funding mechanism across Colorado to start the recycling services and infrastructure. Those are funded and can be provided through contracts or reimbursement by providers of those services. And it's funded through annual dues on the producer themselves. They belong to a producer responsibility organization that is a nonprofit organization created by this bill that has all kinds of membership and participation opportunities. So it's a little bit complicated, but the goal is to provide recycling broadly and to make sure that producers of products are responsive to the need to recycle the packaging and the paper associated with their products. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions off the bat. And I would just say I wasn't principal on this bill, but Tim Broderick on our team provided a lot of valuable insights here. He knows it quite a bit better.
Colin, Sandy's asking if there's any word on whether Polis will sign the bill or if he's still being pressured to veto it.
Oh, he's certainly being pressured. I don't know if there's any expectation he will not sign it. It doesn't have a signature date yet, but a lot of bills don't have dates yet or haven't been signed yet. He has quite a tour on his hands right now. He's signing like a whole pile of bills in Louisville and tomorrow. Yeah, he's certainly under pressure, but he's under pressure with a few of these bills that we've already shown today. I would say that in the past, he has not hesitated to signal very early on if he's planning to veto a bill or threatening to veto a bill. And we haven't gotten explicit veto threats. Anything else on this one, or should I move on?
I think we're good.
Okay. So this one, Zach, again, you probably know more about this one than I do, but this one was born like a phoenix from the flames. It was in response to local governments just going, we need sustained help with disasters. So it's the loans and funds for eligible residents, business owners, housing authorities, nonprofits, governments to rebuild after a declared disaster in 2022, the 15 million through DOLA, and then the 20 million fund through CO for high efficiency home rebuilding after a declared disaster. So actually, I feel like, Zach, do you have anything you would throw out there about this bill?
It's for current and future disasters, and vis-a-vis the Marshall Fire. This isn't formalized yet, but the thinking is that funding would go towards electrification of homes, since Excel already has a variety of incentives available for homeowners to improve the envelope and the insulation and the air sealing and other aspects of the home performance, but it doesn't have any specifically for electrification. So it's being worked on now of how to pair these incentives that'll be managed by the Energy Office with what's offered by Excel for the Marshall Fire affected homeowners. So stay tuned.
Cool. And again, thanks go out to everyone for getting this bill together so quickly and getting it out the door, because that was a lot of work and badly needed. So any questions on this or anything else that's gone by? Cool. Well, I'll relieve your eyes of the of this if I can find Teams again on my computer. There we go. And again, I would say just hold on for a shareable summary of this whole bunch of stuff. I want to make sure that it's been justly reviewed by and all the bills have been signed, so we know that they are good to go. But this was your sneak preview. And Zach, if you will send me the questions that then I will try to get answers to that you can share with the group or the asker.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions for Colin on those bills?
Thanks, Colin.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, and I'll I will just sit back and chill and listen to the discourse.
Cool. So the other thing I wanted to cover related to bills is just a reminder. Let me share my screen. That from last year, and I believe many of you are tracking this, but from last year, House Bill 21-1162, management of plastic products, did a couple of things. One, it repealed the prohibition that municipalities had on banning the use or sale of specific types of plastic. So that happens on July 1st of 2024. So what that means is, if your community wanted to say, you can't have single-use straws, for example, that we could now say that in our communities after July 1st, 2024. It also, starting the January 1st, 2024, prohibits stores and retail food establishments from providing single-use plastic carryout bags, except stores that operate solely in Colorado and have 3 or fewer locations. So, except all the small businesses can still do it, which is a big exception. Another thing it does is puts in place a bag fee starting on January 1st, so 6 short months away, for plastic or paper bags. And this is a particularly good one to note, and I know Boulder's tracking this, I know Louisville's tracking this, but for those communities that don't already have a bag fee in place, the administration of this falls to your municipality. The state is not administering this bag fee. We identified that as a problem early on. Like, for example, how is Lions going to figure out which of their locations only operate solely in Colorado and have 3 or fewer locations? Lions probably isn't a good example. The town clerk probably just knows off the top of her head. But I don't say Longmont, Erie. How will you determine that? There's nothing in the bill to help you do that. No help from the state. We have been asking around with CDPHE, with the Department of Local Affairs, with the Colorado Energy Office. Very nice people who have said, yeah, that's a problem that could be much more efficiently done by the state, but we're not the right office to do it, and there's no provision of funding to do it. So thus far, I have not found anyone to take up the charge on, and I talked with EcoCycle as well, on making this an efficient thing to implement across our communities in Boulder County. But I mean, so I don't have a solution there. It's a problem without a solution. But as it stands right now, if you do nothing, then there's no bag fee in your community because your municipality is responsible for implementing that. Similarly, I didn't put it on the slide, but the other thing that happens in January of next year, again, 6 short months away, is all retail food establishments, regardless of size, regardless of how many locations they have, are no longer allowed to use expanded polystyrene, styrene, or styrofoam. So that's coming up pretty quickly here as well. And again, enforcement falls to the local municipalities with no real provision for help on that either, or communications on that either. So we're definitely, we're working with a lot of you already on helping your restaurants transition off polystyrene. We have, I don't know if I can say this yet, but I'm gonna, we're working with Tundra Restaurant Supply and Eco Products, who are talking about offering a 50% discount for the first 6 months on compostable to-go-ware products for restaurants that switch through them. So like I said, I don't know that that's finalized yet, but things like that are in the works. So we're working on the styrofoam piece. But the bag fee is a real biggie. And I'm happy to continue to have conversations with folks about, how could we, at least at the county level, how do we make this workable and manageable? Unincorporated Boulder County doesn't have, to my knowledge, have any businesses that would fall under the bag fee. Maybe there's, like look at like Efrins on like East Boulder if they're on an unincorporated Boulder County, but so we don't really have a role for Boulder County proper, but certainly Pace and Oscar staff are happy to help support the effort at implementing this across the county, across the municipalities, if desired, because it seems kind of silly to me for everyone to reinvent the wheel on this one. So I haven't talked about that in like 6 months, but we're 6 months closer to, well, we're now 6 months away from that being implemented, and I haven't, to my knowledge, I haven't heard any help coming from the state on how to make implementation feasible for 200 municipalities across the state that all were given this ability, I guess. I call it a mandate, but I would imagine there's probably so many that are just going to say like, oh, we're just not going to enforce this. But I know we want to locally.
Can I ask a question about that, Zach?
Yeah.
When you said, like, so what happens? I'm not suggesting that we would, but what happens if you don't enforce? Like, what does that mean? Or is there a time period or some guidance that we could give some thoughts to about that responsibility? I'm curious about potentially conversations that might already be occurring and we just don't know.
Yeah. I will need to, and maybe I can get Colin's help looking up what happens if you don't enforce. From memory, from reading through the bill a bunch of times and looking for like, how is there not someone who's supposed to help with us? There is no provision in the bill on, if a municipality chooses to not enforce. But I will confirm that, but I'm pretty positive there's nothing in there that.
And I'm not suggesting, I mean, if it exists, I would love to know about it, but if
Right.
it doesn't exist, I'd be really interested in this, in other participants on this call, any thoughts we or the chambers might have regarding timeframes or what that looks like. I'd rather encourage than enforce, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people have more thoughts on that. It's less of an issue for us in some respects, but I think we might think about that as a time period by which to develop something that is actually sustainable, because I'm not sure anybody had planned on doing anything, and I'm very sure that most governments are quite overwhelmed right now and somewhat understaffed. So I just wanted to raise that as something we might think about, not necessarily, if it's already been decided, that's fine. If it hasn't, I would love us to be thoughtful in what that might look like in the role of government and in the sustainability of that. Thanks.
Yeah. And also, I would hazard to guess that there are certain communities in Colorado that are not tracking this at all because they don't care about it and it's not their priorities, and it just won't happen. Certainly some of the more conservative municipalities across the state, without a mandate to do it, and without any support to do it, and without a desire to do it, and without even any reminders from anybody to do it, it's hard to imagine that that's going to happen.
I agree with the note that Sandy says, right, which is it's I just want to understand. I'd rather incentivize and help people than enforce. So
Yeah.
just curious about that. Thank you.
Okay, so in the chat, Lizzie, do you just want to say what you said in the chat?
Yeah, happy to. I have two questions. The first is, I know a few municipalities are looking to expand the fee and the ban to all businesses to include, to essentially remove the exception that's listed in the bill. Do you know if we have to wait till that July 1st, 2024 marker to expand the ban and the fee to small businesses?
I would imagine not, because Boulder and Louisville already figured out how to put a fee, and well, not a ban, but put the fee in place. So the ban, yes, the fee, no.
Okay. And then my second question is, we're already creating information and outreach for businesses that will be issuing a 10-cent fee specifically to residents, and we're going to start rolling it out to those businesses that will have to start implementing a fee come the new year. Does the county have an interest in playing a larger role to keep communications and outreach consistent across the county, or is it kind of up to the municipalities to handle on their own?
I'll speak for yeah, yes, we'd like to play a larger role. I think Tim Broderick would be, if were he here, I think he would be interested in that. It seems really inefficient to me to have, each of you, have to reinvent the wheel for yourselves. And it'd be nice to have some consistent messaging for our public as well. So yeah, I think we are, and maybe it's high time to get another meeting set up around that subject.
Yeah, I would personally love that. We've been working with Louisville on some of their communications and our communications to keep things somewhat consistent, but would love some more help and across the county as well.
Okay, I will connect with Tim and Elizabeth. Yeah, Sandy, involving Recycle Colorado is a good idea. Probably EcoCycle. Yeah, I'll connect with Tim and Elizabeth, and we'll get a doodle poll sent out.
Thank you.
Lizzie, how have you identified which businesses will be impacted by, which businesses have 3 or more locations in Colorado and a presence in Lafayette?
So we're still in the process of doing that. Luckily, a lot of our businesses are small businesses, so they wouldn't fall under the bill for now. Mostly just our own personal knowledge of the city and kind of working through the list, but we are working with our economic development director and our sales tax manager. We're going to be requesting businesses to remit the 60% of the 10 cents through the business license application that they already have to go through. So we're still in the early steps of figuring all of those pieces out, but we're starting to.
Okay, yeah, I think that works for, Lafayette or smaller size communities. That be more of a challenge for Boulder and Longmont.
Yeah.
I have no idea how Berenice and company are going to do it in Denver. Luck to that.
I think SAC, the planning department, the ones that issue the certificate of occupancy, they may have a good database.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I think that would be a in Boulder and in Longmont, there is also a planning department, so it would be or reach out to them.
Yeah, the challenge, of course, is understanding. It's easy to know which are which businesses are in your community, relatively speaking. The harder thing to know is which of them have locations, additional locations outside of your community, also in Colorado.
Yeah,
That's-
I think the building department will know because they ask. Well, at least in Denver, they ask, but I don't know other communities. And also for the Latino businesses, what we're doing is we're downloading the data from Secretary of State and checking last names. And I know it's too much work, but we saw another organization doing the same in Commerce City, and it worked for them. So we plan to do that for Latino businesses to let them know.
Sorry, Barry, say how are you letting them know?
We are downloading the data from the Secretary of State, and we are analyzing by last name, like Garcia or Hernandez, and we're just making assumptions that those are Hispanic or Latino based on that trade agent last name.
Okay, but you're not, and that's not also letting you know which ones have multiple locations, though.
Well, when you search, all the entity appears, and the entity, it may have several locations. For example, El Tequileño has like 4 locations, and it's the same entity.
Interesting. Maybe you and I can follow up offline, because when I've searched that database, if there's one corporation registered, it just shows up as one. It doesn't tell you every location that they have, right? Like Premier Members Credit Union shows up as Premier Members Credit Union with their corporate headquarters. Not, that database doesn't list every branch that Premier Members Credit Union has, and not that they're one that would be subject to this, but they just came to mind.
Yes, yeah, we can follow offline, and we can do it. And I think you can do like ¿cómo se llama? Advanced search.
Okay.
Do advanced search. It's good.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'm going to follow up with you.
I'm so sorry.
Find a time to do that.
Yeah, sorry guys, but I think what Liz is doing in Lafayette is a great starting point for people.
Yeah. Cool. Well, great discussion. And so I will follow up on with Barry to try and figure out if we can get a techie way to identify which businesses would be subject to the 10-cent fee. And then I'll work on getting a meeting invite out for the municipalities to coordinate on implementation and education around that fee. And I said at the top that we'd have time for updates, but I've taken up the whole time on this. So any updates that folks would want to share with this mix of group of economic vitality and sustainability staff? Okay, cool. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Colin and I will work to get your questions answered, and I'll send out those answers and the recording and the slides once all those things are finalized next week.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you
so
much.
Talk to you in a couple of months.